Welcome to the Vault of Fire. Collector's Archive. Welcome to the Collector's Archive. I am the Vault Keeper. Engaging human interface.
What was the what's the inspiration behind the name Greybeard Plastikwerks?
So when I'm overseas, I get to grow a beard, and
Right.
it comes in gray. I
Right.
meant to pull up a picture to show you. Maybe I'll do it later. But it used to come in like Santa Claus.
Right.
So Greybeard, and then for Plastikwerks, because I really got into customizing action figures for a while, and it just kind of was like, if I ever actually do something when I have more time, I just thought it would be like a fun name. Like I'm somehow in the factory, cranking away at plastic toys in like German.
Production line of all these figures and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Does that. Right then. Well, we'll get right into it then, Mike. So, if you just want to briefly take a moment just to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and what your main collecting focus is.
Yep. So like I say, my name's Mike. I'm an American. I've spent most of my life in the Southeast United States. Right now, my big focus has been Mythic Legions, made by Four Horsemen Studios. They got really well known for working in McFarlane when he first started making toys, and they later on doing the Motu Classics. So that's my primary focus. It's where I spend a lot of my time is finding places to display them and how to display them. Really enjoying the Super 7 Ultimates lines. That's been great for like my nostalgia of hitting all the different toy lines from when I was a kid and cartoons. Mm-hmm. I really like the Transformers Studio series. Was it the 86? Like the one based off the animated movie? That's kind of my Transformers focus right now, which has been good because so much to choose from. And if I kind of stick to that line, I like that aesthetic, and it's all characters I enjoy from being a kid. G.I. Joe Classifieds. As we talk later, you'll find out G.I. Joe's played a big role in my life. So the classified line's been a lot of fun to collect and seeing what's coming out next and modern adaptations of the toys I loved as a kid.
Right. We're going to dive into that when we get around to that. So growing up, so I'm assuming, so you, much like myself, I take it you're a kid of the 70s, 80s, growing up with all that stuff there. So what kind of stuff are you watching then as you're growing up? Cartoons, TV shows, movies, comics. What comics you're reading, and some I've been adding to this. So it's like the music as well. What you're listening to, what music, So essentially, what's going off as you're growing up, regarding all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Earliest memories, I remember playing, I loved G.I. Joes as a kid. That was just hitting its stride with the comics, the cartoons, toy line available everywhere. It was interesting, I would play with the G.I. Joes, but when it was time for imaginate, playing with your buddies and stuff, always reverted to playing Star Wars, what's Luke Skywalker doing, which is interesting. I had Star Wars toys and I liked them. Yeah. But G.I. Joes were my favorite toy, but then when in imagination time, it would be Star Wars with the buddies. 'Cause I think maybe just everyone knew Star Wars. Yeah. So enjoyed the cartoon for G.I. Joe. Super Friends, I remember rushing home from school to watch Super Friends in the afternoons. DC characters were they're still obviously huge. Yeah. But I think in in our childhood, DC, as far as mass media, kind of reigned supreme with Superman and Batman. Really enjoyed those. Enjoyed the superpowers that came with that. Right. The toy line. Spiral Zone. I don't know. Did you ever see Spiral Zone?
No. Well, I've made a note of that actually to ask you what is Spiral Zone.
Surrender, or pay the consequences.
Earth's most powerful soldiers are Earth's last chance to fight the spiral zone. Darkness has fallen on the victims of the zone. Our world calls for courage, peace and freedom. We must own. We will fight on our honor, what is right. We'll defend, fight the zone. Zone riders, Earth's most powerful soldiers, are Earth's last chance against the spiral zone. Spiral zone. Earth's most powerful soldiers fight the spiral zone. Our world calls for courage, peace and freedom. We must own. We will fight on our honor, what is right. We'll defend, fight the zone. Zone riders, Earth's most powerful soldiers, are Earth's last chance against the spiral zone. Spiral zone.
It's sad. It's a dark cartoon, but it was crazy.
Right.
It's like the villains had like these devices that they planted all over the earth,
Yeah.
and when connected, they created a spiral zone over the globe. And if you were in it, you got turned into a zombie. And then the heroes with spiral zoners were
Yeah.
a couple like special operators from different countries. There's an American, a German, a Japanese guy, a
Yeah.
Russian girl. And they had this like modular equipment, like they all had like armor and these helmets that would protect them from the spiral zone.
Right.
But then you could buy these expansion packs with all these different like backpacks that turned into laser guns or motorcycles. Check it out. I think you can
Yeah.
find the whole series on YouTube. It was a lot of fun, and I think probably the figures were on discount or something at one point. Because I
Right.
remember my mom just getting me a ton of them.
Yeah.
And occasionally I'll try and pick one up off of eBay.
Right.
I'm not a completist with that line.
No.
There's so many things out there. But yeah, check it out. It's a lot of fun. It's not dark. Like no one's dying and stuff. But for a kid's cartoon, it's got a
Right.
fairly serious storyline.
Yeah.
But the figures were a lot of fun. Sectars, which they've had a bit of a resurgence of late. They're a lot of fun. I like the real interesting looking characters. I remember playing with them, but not really knowing why they looked the way they did, because the cartoon didn't. I think it was just a few episodes.
Right.
Transformers and He-Man. I remember like Transformers. Like my sister showed me a picture a few years ago at Christmas of me holding a Megatron like in the gun form. But I remember as a kid just not being bright enough to transform a Transformer by myself. So it was always frustrating. Same with Legos. But really like the He-Man figures when I was a kid as well. I remember a lot of pictures of me playing with those.
Right. So the G.I. Joe stuff, was that? It might sound a silly question, but was the G.I. Joe cartoon and stuff, was that like an instant hit over in the States? Was it a big deal and a big thing, or did it have to work at it before it became quite big?
For me, in my childhood memories, it was pretty popular as soon as I can remember, like buying, being able to pick out my own toys and stuff like that. All my buddies, they know who you were talking about. I don't remember reading the comic book as much till a little bit later in my childhood, but the cartoon would come on before school where I lived. So, you get to class and your buddies all saw, the episode that morning. They knew who Snake Eyes was, who was going to be Duke. And then the figures and the play sets and the vehicles were so readily available. The price was just right. And so like, if you were good that week, every kid I hung out with, their mom was getting them a G.I. Joe on vacation.
Right.
I remember we took a vacation to Disney World, and the key takeaway that I enjoyed was the bounty of GI Joe figures you could get there that year.
Right.
That was what I remember the most.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool, because I was gonna. That was one of the things I was gonna ask you about. If there was any standout memories of, like a birthday or Christmas or a holiday toy that one that stands out that when you got it you were just like, oh, this is amazing kind of thing.
Yeah. So I had an aunt, and like not every Christmas, but there was a couple Christmases. I was looking it up last night, like which years this must have been. But she would always send me at least one big GI Joe vehicle or playset. So my parents were pretty, GI Joe action figures weren't that expensive, so they were pretty nice about letting me pick them out from time to time. So I had a healthy collection of the figures. But my aunt would send. One year she sent me the Night Raven. It was a giant black Cobra jet. Had another smaller jet attached to it, and that was pretty cool because that was like the biggest toy I had. Another year, I guess had to be 2 or 3 years later, she sent the Thunderclap, which was like a big mobile artillery piece with a huge cannon. Came with a figure, like 2 little tanks to pull it around. So those were always like huge surprises. You'd see the box under the tree, and you're like, oh. But yeah, those stood up the most. I remember one year my dad telling me if I saved up to pay for half of a Nintendo, like the original Nintendo, he played the other half. And all my buddies were rooting for me. And then I went to Walmart, and it was like GI Joe figures were like it was like $3 flat for a figure. And that was the year like Lieutenant Falcon came out.
Right.
He's a Green Beret, and I remember watching the movie Green Berets with my grandpa. Yeah. I was like, oh, I gotta have it. And then my buddy's like, "You're stupid. You're gonna get a Nintendo, and you just set yourself back $3."
Well, when you've got to have it, you've got to have it, haven't you?
It's a great figure too.
Yeah. So that's right. So there was no. I'm just trying to remember the name of it. The ship. Was it Flag? USS Flag.
Yeah, I saw it in a toy store once as a kid. Like we went to like a bigger city at like Christmas time to go to the mall, and it was sitting there, and it was like on discount or on sale, but it was like, I forget what the price was, but I did not think it was something I could ask for. Plus, how are we going to get it home? But yeah, I'll occasionally see it in some of the toy shops, the bigger toy, like vintage toy shops around the States. It's tempting one day.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the things I noticed about the GI Joe stuff. Is the size of some of the vehicles. I mean, there was another one. Again, I don't know the name of it. Was it some kind of like space shuttle kind of thing?
GI Joe fans are gonna the Conquest.
I can't think of the name of it.
I know.
It was like on a launching dock as well, and
it's amazing too. Have you ever heard of GI Joeberg? It's some GI Joe collectors from South Africa.
No,
they do a really good video detailing the. It'll come to me an hour from now. It was huge.
If not, what I'll do is when I'm editing and going back, I'll see about putting a picture and the name of it up. But I can't think of the name. But there was some nice looking vehicles, for that toy line.
And it was pretty cool because it allowed the expansion, because not every kid wants to play with jungle fighters. No. Fighting the Vietnamese, some of them might like space. So throwing in the space shuttle and brighter colors, and allowed, and I bet the toy designers like the ability to, stretch their artistic talent and design some astronauts instead of just another, infantryman with a rifle.
So did you manage to get a Robo Skull?
No, I was overseas for work. And I hemmed and hawed because they offered it, because I think the way it's set up, you can get it for either a 1/18 or was it 1/12 scale, depending on your.
That's a new one. I'm talking about back in the day.
The I think that's more of a UK thing. The Action Force, right? Yep. And I don't recall.
I know the Action Force, but they then released it under Cobra, GI Joe Cobra.
I don't remember.
So did you not get that in the States then? Did that not?
No, not that I know of. If it made it here, maybe it was guys who whose families worked overseas or something. I'm familiar. You know, you'll see it at toy conventions. It's an awesome looking toy, though.
Beautiful. It is beautiful. Yeah. I do have one, and it's just, yeah. There's just something. It's just lovely. It's just a really nice piece. It shouldn't work, but it does. It's just like just so bizarre. But it's a great piece.
It's eye catching.
It is. Yeah, it is. So let's see now. Where are we now? Yes. So we've got that, haven't we?
There's also. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead, Mike. No, go ahead.
Got into comic books also around that same age. Mostly Marvel, but I did like Justice League on the DC side. But remember a couple of kids, I was hanging out over at the house and they had a bunch of comic books, and they're like, oh yeah, they're cheap. You can get them at the drugstore. Mm-hmm. I remember picking up an Uncanny X-Men because that was what my buddy was reading. Right. And there's a cover. It's Wolverine like crucified on an X on the cover. Yeah. Bought that one and I was hooked.
Right.
Yeah. So I was a big fan of Marvel Comics as a kid, and then just right from there just expanded. Had to, every time I had a couple bucks, it was either a G.I. Joe figure or a Marvel comic.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. No, I've not been much on the Marvel side. I did apart from the Transformers comic.
Yeah.
And the Zoids. But then later on, it would have been around about 89. Then it was the DC stuff, because the Batman film.
Yeah.
So just I lent into the DC stuff a bit there.
They were good. I think around the same time, because of the Batman movie, it was everywhere. So there's some really good story. No better, no worse. Just depend on what flavor you liked.
Yeah. I mean, I have since looked over some of the Marvel stuff. I was trying to remember what it was. A friend got me. I don't know if it's a recent comic or if it's a reprint of an old one, but they got me the Marvel Zombies one.
Yeah,
and that was a good story. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Different angle. All the Easter eggs in there, and it was good stories.
But I mean, I am a fan of zombie films and things like that. So it's it was quite a good marrying up of the two things there.
Well, check out Spiral Zone though. That's in the zombie genre. Then check it out. I'm
gonna have to look that one up. I think I'll include a link as well on this when it goes up.
All right.
It sounds good. Those kind of things sound, because there's a few others that I used to watch that nobody remembers. There was one called Space Sentinels.
I've not heard of it.
To remember one. That was a Hanna-Barbera one.
Okay.
That would have been probably late 70s, early 80s. Nobody seems to remember that.
Yeah.
Many centuries ago, three earthlings were transported from their native lands to my faraway world. Here they were granted astounding powers and eternal youth. Then returned to Earth. Their mission, to watch over the human race, helping the good in it to survive and flourish. In the course of history, their names have become legend. Hercules, empowered with the strength of 100 men. Astrea, able to assume any living form. Mercury, the amazing athlete who can match the speed of light. Working together with me, Sentinel-1, and my maintenance robot, Mo. These teenage guardians form the greatest team the world has ever known. The Space Sentinels.
Now I'm interested.
Yeah, Space Sentinels.
All right. I've of late, there's a lot of on YouTube, a lot of collections of like Saturday morning cartoons. And almost as a punishment to my kids on Saturdays and Sundays, I just put on 4 hours of 80s and 70s cartoons, and some of it they really like.
Yeah. Oh, there are some good cartoons from them, but there are also some not so good cartoons from back then.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Something for everybody though.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. So we're going to move on a bit now, and so you've gone through childhood, and you're moving out then of that phase. Can you remember sort of like, is there any specific toys or games, comics, or whatever that stand out from from just before you moved on and stopped playing with them, and you grew up kind of thing?
Yeah, it honestly, like right up to the very end, it was still G.I. Joe figures.
Right.
I think I mentioned it when I emailed you, like the last battle. It was like one day I was like, I don't think I'm supposed to be doing this anymore. And taking them out in the backyard. I had some model paint. I think I mentioned earlier. My dad and I were painting models and stuff, and using red, the red paint as like war wounds.
Yeah,
I was like, I was retiring them. Like one last battle. All the things like in my head of like, over the years, like, oh, I want to do this, but I don't want to break my toys. Totally regret it. I wish I still had those figures.
So don't you have any of your original stuff left then from childhood?
No, my mom did me a big solid when I moved out and sold whatever was left, and I didn't find out till later. It was fine, it was they're toys. I don't do a lot of vintage collecting now, but there's a few lines that I have gone back. Spiral Zone, I got a couple. Sectars. Some of it's because they're a little easier there's less demand for them, and they're just to me like visually unique. So I'll go back and try and plus up those lines. I remember at this point I was in college and I was working at the mall, and a buddy of mine, and we were working at Baskin Robbins, and one of the guys I worked with, he had similar interests in comic books and stuff. So we went down to the KB Toys, and like the McFarlane toys were out. Right. And I remember like seeing like these Wetworks. Do you remember Wetworks? It was like gold-plated soldiers. It was an Image line, an Image comic.
No, I don't recall those. No.
Oh, they were just like caught the eye, and for no reason, no logical reason, I was like, I gotta get one of these, and I got one of those, and I think that was like the inkling that I might end up being a toy collector later on. Right. So that was probably like the last toy I bought before being a toy collector as an adult.
Yeah,
with some of those Wetworks figures.
So is that what brought you back to it then? So right, okay, I'll phrase it. When did collecting, or when did you realize you were a collector? When did you come back to that? Was there any particular circumstances, and was there a particular figure or item that precipitated that?
Yeah. So probably after my wife and I got married, a few years into it, started having more free time, wasn't going out doing stuff, and so I got back into collecting comics and was really into Marvel comics. And then a few years later, we had moved to Hawaii, and we were in the Target, and there was the Marvel Universe, like 3.75 inch, like 1/18 scale line, and I'd never seen that. The Marvel Legends you'd see out on the shelf from time to time, but because I grew up being a G.I. Joe and Star Wars collector, like that 1/18 scale was always more interesting to me. And like that initial like offering on the shelf, it was like obscure characters. You'd always see Captain America or Spider-Man or Wolverine, but there was Moon Knight, and Moon Knight comics I always like to collect just because, once again, not a big demand for it. It's interesting stories, and he's just an interesting looking character. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I'm just gonna pick up this Moon Knight. When's the next time I'm gonna find a Moon Knight figure? Yeah, on the shelf. And then the next one was like a Union Jack, and I was like, well, a Union Jack, like, you're never gonna see a Union Jack figure. Right. And in my mind, he's a mildly obscure character and a kind of a neat, like, okay, I'll just put him next to my comic books. Yeah. And then they had the Iron Man 2 figures, and I was like, oh, I'll get an Iron Man. It's a cool looking Iron Man. Yeah. And then went home, and then like the next day I was just bought everything I could find on the shelf for that line, and really got into that line. I would say the Marvel Universe line was what made me a collector. They had a lot of good G.I. Joe figures on the shelf at the time, but I would just like, I'll buy this to help me make custom Marvel Universe figures.
Yeah.
And then it just exploded from there.
Yeah, as it does. It does. Yeah. It just escalates and escalates, and before you know it, you've got a room full of stuff, and it's just like, oh, when did this happen?
Yeah, exactly.
So I know you've mentioned you briefly mentioned it earlier, but I'm going to ask it again. But so, what is it that shapes your collecting now? You know, and are there any motivations or do you have like an end goal with it, or is it just kind of a free flowing thing for you?
I would say like the thing that kind of shapes it the most is I like kind of making displays for the different figures. I mentioned earlier I really like the Mythic Legions right now, and those characters are like divided into different factions. So as I display them on the shelf, I'll try to like, you know, build a foam background for them, like that kind of matches with that theme of that faction. A couple of years ago, I built a really cool diorama for my AIM figures from the Marvel Universe.
Right.
Use like lighting kits from like railroad kits, you know, model train kits. It was pretty neat. You know, it was like a couple different levels, had a bunch of lights, and I just had a ton of AIM little scientists in there.
Yeah. I
really enjoyed doing that. Also just like fulfilling that 80s nostalgia, and that's where like the Super 7 Ultimates line, Nacelle Toy Company, like they're they made like the Toys That Made Us series on Netflix.
All right, yeah.
They've slowly got a couple of different licenses. So they've got a couple of Sectars figures on pre-order. So stuff like that, when I see something where it's like, oh, here's a chance to get some toy line from an obscure cartoon that I liked as a kid. Yeah, it'd be nice to have, you know, it's neat to just have something from all the different cartoons and media that I liked as a kid.
Yeah, so it's fueled by that nostalgia thing, that connection to the childhood, which I completely get.
The Collector's Art Hack will return after these messages.
Fight for freedom wherever there's trouble. G.I. Joe is there. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe is there. It's G.I. Joe against Cobra the enemy, fighting to save the day. He never gives up. He's always there, fighting for freedom over land and air. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe is there.
G.I. Joe is the code name for America's daring, highly trained Special Mission Force. Its purpose, to defend human freedom against Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world.
He never gives up, he'll stay till the fight's won. G.I. Joe will dare. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe.
We now return to the Collector's Art Hack.
If I can ask you though, because I'll be honest with you, I'm ignorant to it. I don't know what is this Mythic Legions then? What is that?
It's a horrible addiction.
Right.
I'll grab a figure real quick.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Let's see. So this guy just came out. Let's see. He just shipped a couple of, I would say last month. He's the leader of one of the factions.
Right.
I don't know if that's a good shot of him, but you see a lot of detail in the paint.
So are they model kits that you have to build?
No, they're 1/12 scale figures. They highly detailed, but they don't cost much more than a GI Joe classified.
Right.
They come with you'll see a lot of parts reuse, but the way that the talent in the painting and the sculpts, like you can buy 3 figures that use all the same parts and they look totally unique. This guy here, he was they call it like the 2.0 version. So there's an earlier version of this guy, and this is like a more highly ornate guy. But every year they've just been fleshing out the line, and every year they come up with new and better techniques. They started adding more soft goods to them, more individual head sculpts that make them unique. They did the horses a couple years ago.
Yeah,
they've got a neat theme. Like the name of the company is Four Horsemen. So 4 of the factions, their leaders are like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, but within the mythos of their toy line.
Is there like a media or marketing that goes with that? Like, is there a comic or a cartoon or something like that goes with it, or is it just purely a figure line?
It's mostly word of mouth, like their own marketing, or like word of mouth, putting them on sale. There is a ongoing storyline. So just like GI Joes and Transformers, every character came with like an individual biography on the card, and then those biographies tie together to build a bigger storyline. And then they released a comic with the first Kickstarter for the first wave. I've only read it online, but it's pretty neat. It kind of builds the basis, and every wave adds more detail to the story. A couple of the guys that run it are working on like a novel to tell more of like the background, and it's like a Dungeons and Dragons, Lord of the Rings style.
I was just gonna say it reminds me kind of like the Warhammer kind of thing. Is it that kind of Yeah,
it's all like medieval. Basically, so not guns or anything. They've got a couple of the waves coming up will have a lot more magic users with like individual like special effects parts to look like they're casting spells. And then they I'll grab another figure real quick. So because I won't say they got their start, but they're really well known for sculpting the Motu Classics line for Mattel. They've got these tribute figures.
Yeah.
These are using their parts, and but they'll make tribute figures for various He-Man characters.
Yeah.
And they'll release those in time for like He-Man conventions and stuff as exclusives.
Yeah.
And they use that to kind of catch people's eyes when they go to the toy conventions that are like He-Man fans. They're like, oh, what's this? That looks like He-Man. And that kind of draws them in. So they've done a really good job of like, even though they do it all themselves, they've got a pretty decent fan following. They've got a second line that they just launched, I would say last year, that's Cosmic Legions, and that'll be more sci-fi, space type stuff. Those figures should start, I think, coming out this year.
The same scale then, as well.
Same scale. There'll be some interchangeability between the parts. The next He-Man tribute ones will be from that Cosmic line, which is kind of neat for He-Man because it was a mix of sci-fi and sword and sorcery type stuff. But highly creative. Definitely give them a look. But I mean, it's a rabbit hole. I remember I was overseas, bored, and they had a Kickstarter. I missed the first Kickstarter, and they had the second one was going on, and they had a Templar night, but it was a female Templar night. And I can grab one of those as well.
Yeah.
So my wife made the cape, but just the I don't know, the iconography of the Templars, really caught my eye, and I was like, okay, I
Yeah.
really like this company. I think like a Templar Knight would be an awesome figure to have on the shelf. So I was like, I'll just buy that one, or I'll order that one. And by the end of the month, I was going back through eBay and getting stuff from the first wave. They've also got a real popular male Templar Knight, and they've actually got a couple new ones coming out in the next couple of waves.
Right. So I can't remember if I asked it, but are they fully articulated as well?
Yep. Yep. They're pretty well articulated because they've got these beautiful sculpts. You know, they're not like a Spider-Man, you know, high-end Spider-Man figure from Japan that can, you know, touch its toes and everything, but a lot of the same points of articulation that you'll find in most 1/12 scale. You know, sometimes the sculpt gets in the way, but knees bend and twist. Oops.
So like I say, so kind of akin to like a Marvel Legends or a Classified then.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then all the parts like between the line, like pop and swap. So it's real popular with customizers. Because you can buy 3 figures and make hundreds of variations off of the parts available, and every year they introduce more parts into the line. So guys or collectors are real creative with what you can do with them.
Yeah. No. So the let's see now where am I with my notes. Let me just. That's where we are. Yeah, because I know you'd put it. It's a tough call, but I'm going to ask you again. Do you have a favourite piece out of your collection?
Yeah, it is a tough call. You know, it's almost more like favorite lines. I got a couple of Super 7 Silverhawks figures came in the other day, and so you know they're my favorite today. There's a couple of the Mythic Legions where I've painted them myself and bought custom like third-party parts, and it's like if I had to save just one, or I'm sorry, that's a different question. But if I had to,
that's fine because I'll say if it makes it easier for you, then I'll say, you know, it's something, you know, house is on fire. You know, this like, you know, hopefully it never happens, but this thing, you know, the house is on fire. Your kids and your wife are safe, you know, but you can go and get one thing to rescue. You know, what's your rescue item going to be?
Yeah, I guess it would just be one of the custom ones that I did because, you know, it'd be a good representation of the line, and then a little bit of my, you know, hard work went into it.
Right.
I've got I think I mentioned it earlier. I don't know if you remember, it was not horrible. I really like it, but it wasn't a popular comic called Nth Man, and it was written by Larry Hama the same time he was writing G.I. Joe. And I got to meet him at a convention a few years ago. I got him to sign it. I just figured it would be more interesting than having him sign a G.I. Joe comic.
Yeah.
But I got to have like a really nice conversation with him. I'm in the Army and he used to be in the Army, so we started talking about that, and maybe he was just like talking about something other than G.I. Joe or comic books. So we, you know, got to share 15 minutes talking to a guy that's responsible for so much entertainment that I've enjoyed my whole life, and it's shaped my life. So I maybe probably save that comic just as a memento of that day.
Yeah. So what is that then? The Nth Man. What is that?
It's pretty cool. They had to wrap it up because it got canceled earlier, but it's basically World War III has happened, and magically nuclear weapons were taken out. So it's a conventional war. And when you jump into the first issue, you're following this ninja. Which big white guy with long blonde hair, or long white hair, and they call him the Nth Man, and it's like him, this dentist that taught him all his martial arts,
right?
And there's like a Russian Spetsnaz female officer, and they're on like a rescue mission to go get this guy. And as it progresses, it's a mix of like this conventional World War III going on between like Russia and China. And then, but at the same time, there's like a little bit of Marvel magic, and like one of the characters has these like Galactus level powers. Right. And it turns out he and the Nth Man are like tied together through their childhood. And so it goes from just like conventional warfare to metaphysical stuff. There's a Galactus Easter egg in there because like the characters grew up reading Marvel comics, so it seeds a little bit of that into like some of the scenes. I really enjoyed it. It was fun, and it's written by Larry Hama. Art's
Yeah.
really good, and there's only like 20 some odd issues, so it's an easy
Right.
read. But that's another one to check out. It's a little bit obscure, but
Yeah,
it's a
Ant-Man,
fun
yeah.
read.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that one. So I've just jotted two things out because I'll add this on to, we were talking about your favourite figure and stuff. But do you have a favourite G.I. Joe and Transformers character?
Yeah, for G.I. Joe, it's always been Lieutenant Falcon, the Green Beret. When I was a kid, my grandpa and I were watching. He was a World War II vet. He loved John Wayne, and he was in the Navy. But we were watching the movie Green Berets, and he's like, "Those guys are bad A," And he's like, "Those are the toughest guys on earth," and it always like stuck out to me.
Yeah.
And so when Lieutenant Falcon came out, and he was like a key character in the G.I. Joe animated movie.
Right.
So he's probably my favorite character in G.I. Joe. With Marvel, it's always been Captain America, just because compared to other characters, he's got no powers, but he'll never back down. He always tries to do the right thing. With Transformers, Ultra Magnus, always, obviously he was big in the lead up to the animated movie coming out. He's a big, imposing figure. I like the colors on him.
Yeah.
I like the fact that he's like, depending on the media, I guess, but like throughout the cartoons, some of the comic books, he could be in charge, but he doesn't want to. He just would rather like be the experienced advisor.
Yeah.
And he just looks like a big tough bot.
I must admit, Ultra Magnus was one of my favourite characters from the movie, and as a kid as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, Grimlock is my favourite, full
Is it?
stop. But what I liked about Ultra Magnus, from the point of view of the movie, was that, like you say, he wasn't he didn't want to be leader, but he rose to that, and whether you felt he was effective or not, it was a case of that, he did his best, did his best with what he had, and so it's plus, I mean, the voice that Robert Stack that did the voice, it was just such a great voice work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, right, so now I'm going to ask you about if there's anything new in your collection, anything that's just come in, or anything on your radar. Have you got any orders pending or any pre-order items? And also, if there's anything that isn't available yet but you would like to see made available.
Yeah. So with the Mythic Legions, a couple times a year they got new waves coming out. So I've got a couple of pre-orders for them. I'm looking forward to. Each faction has like a mythical beast or a god that leads it, and that'll be like the theme for the wave. So there's a couple of those with like big, gruesome horses, and they're evil leaders. And then they'll also have the heroic characters from the opposing faction in there. So those are pretty exciting. They also do like an all-stars vote where fans get to vote for previous release figures. They get re-released, so they get a chance to get it at a fair price. So that's coming up. That's actually open right now. I've been getting those Ultimates, Super 7 Ultimates, Silverhawks.
Right.
Yeah, those are starting to trickle out, and those are pretty fun.
Yeah.
New G.I. Joe Classifieds. I just got the Rock and Roll came in the other day. I haven't opened them up yet. He was always one of a preferred character of mine. And then, so I'm really looking forward to those. Just it's neat to see what Hasbro's been trickling out on the G.I. Joe side.
Yeah.
And if like I don't know if unattainable, but Spiral Zone. If there was a modern interpretation of those, would be great. Just that. I don't know, the mix and match. There's a bit of like the G.I. Joe and like they're all soldiers and everything, but a lot of sci-fi in there and a little bit of Transformers when you see like the accessory kits are all like transforming into different things. Yeah.
Do you find yourself backing any of the Hasbro Kickstarters? I mean, I know they've just done. I don't know the name. The helicopter.
Dragonfly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't done the Dragonfly. I did not do the Hiss tank. I don't have. No. I was like, all right, that's a too big for my collection. Draw the line. But anytime the Four Horsemen do anything for the Mythic Legions, I'll do that. I really wanted that Unicron when
Right.
that came out. I regret passing on that. That's amazing. That's a cool figure.
Yeah.
But no, I don't. I think I had to draw the line somewhere, and for
Right.
me, like the Mythic Legions right now, that's my all-in line.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then for the others, I just pick up, what looks great on the shelf with my collection.
Yeah.
But it's cool that they're doing that. I'm glad they're making it available. Things that you would think were impossible.
Out of the Mythic Legions, the G.I. Joe stuff and that, and Transformers, do you have any other interests or hobbies or focuses that aren't attached to your collecting?
I don't do comic books anymore. I sold that. It was taking up the whole garage. I still follow the news and everything. You can't see where my old buddies are doing, the characters. But yeah, the figures is kind of self-contained. I think mentioned earlier, like when there's nothing going on, I'll put old cartoons on YouTube and stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Of late, I'll do a lot of vegetable gardening with the kids.
All right. Cool.
Yeah, they really like that, and so that's been fun.
Yeah, I'm just having a quick scan at your Instagram profile while chatting away. I'm just looking at some of the figures that the photography of the figures you've done. Yeah,
I've dabbled in that. I broke down the studio of late. I haven't put anything up in a bit, but my goal is to get back at it. But I really like experimenting.
Yeah.
With trying to get photos and cool poses out of them. That's really what started the building the dioramas. Was like, oh, how can I take better pictures than just having my white background? So I enjoy doing that.
Yeah. So all those figures, those are from that Mythic Legions.
Yeah, most of the most recent ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those will all be. That's like, it's fun. There's a big community out there of Mythic Legions collectors. It's big, but not too big. So like, there's always opportunity to like find someone else that enjoys it on Instagram or online.
Right.
They've got a big Facebook page. They've got a convention now. I think it's in November. But yeah, those I don't know, like I've always liked the Lord of the Rings type stuff, as aside from, obviously not G.I. Joe, but as far as like that other realm, and the Mythic Legions really just kind of hits it. They hit all the tropes, but they do it in a unique way, you know.
I'm just looking at one now. It reminds it's the Goblin. Is it Swig, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a newer one. Does he have the like the cowl, like the hood on?
That reminds me that there was a game I played a while ago called Styx.
Okay.
And it's like you play the character of this goblin, and it looks really similar to that character.
Nice.
So do you? I mean, I know before we started recording, we were chatting about like customs and things like that. So do you customize any of these, or do you tend to just leave them as they are?
Initially, I would not touch them. They're so beautiful on their own, and I was afraid if I messed it up, I'd never get it again. But the last year, I've gotten into painting them. There's a lot of third-party companies that'll 3D print unique head sculpts. So started doing like the skeletons because that was easy. Like, the paint scheme's fairly easy to figure out, and you don't have to paint eyes. And then just started enjoying kind of mixing and matching paints to come up with new color schemes. And, I don't know if he still is, but there's one, it might be my profile picture for Instagram. Pretty sure that's a figure I painted. Let me look. Yeah, so that's a custom head I bought from a company called Wolf King Customs, and then painted it up myself, and just kind of really, it's dumb, but I really enjoy the sheen of the steel color I was able to get on that cross. Like, to me, it looks like it's like polished metal. So I enjoy that. And then, once you get a good figure painted up, trying to come up with a cool way to take a picture of that. I'm not to the point of gluing or cutting things, and I won't customize it unless I've got a second version of the figure, because the Four Horsemen do such a great job, on their own. One of the things that's cool about that line is they will make a more basic version or character that costs a little bit less, so they'll put less paint applications on it, and that allows the factory price to be a little bit lower, so you can buy 2 or 3 of those.
Yeah.
And then it has room for paint already built in. It comes with a decent amount of accessories.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the group shot of the Templars. They look pretty cool to them.
Yeah, that I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, yeah, because I mean, before we came on today, while we're having my dinner, I was watching a documentary about the Templars.
Yeah.
But yeah, they look pretty cool to them. There's some good stuff there, really good stuff. I'm gonna have to check them out.
Please do. That same company, Wolf King Customs, they a lot of those individual heads on there in that picture. Like they made them, and a couple of the guys that work in that company kind of have like their own storyline, so they're like this own like special unit of Templars.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of allows them to stand out on the shelf. But even like sometimes, like you want your figures to have diversity, different color schemes, different looks. But it's kind of neat every once in a while to have like that army of they'll have that common theme, and on the shelf they just look cool.
Right. So I mean, what the 118 stuff then? I mean, is there any others that you'd pick up, or like would you be, if something caught your eye, would you pick it up, or would you just tend to try and stick to the stuff that you collect and within those boundaries? Sorry.
Yeah. Mostly it's been the 1/12 of late. With the 1/18th, it's like something stands out, or if it's a smaller toy line, like there's a company called Chicken Fried Toys that'll do these cowboys in 1/18th scale, so I'll get those. Another company did a 1/18th line of sectars, so I got as many as those. Hiya Toys has I think it's Hiya Toys has some Judge Dredd figures that look really good, so I'll pick up a couple of those. Joy Toy, what's the line? I'll show you. You'll know better than that. I'm drawing a blank, but it's a game. They have the miniatures.
Oh yeah, that's the Warhammer, isn't it? Is it 40k?
Yeah, that's it. I really like those. I can't get them all, but like the Ultramarines.
Right.
I'll pick those up. Just the colors, the look, are real striking.
Yeah.
Star Wars Clone Troopers. You said you were a Stormtrooper fan. For me, it was Clone Troopers.
Yeah.
So I had to downsize. I had a massive Clone Trooper army. So now I just try to get the ones that I liked from the Clone Wars cartoon.
Yeah. That's the thing about the Clone Troopers. You can. They're also good as well, I suppose, if you want to customize as well the clones.
Yeah.
Because you can just paint them up and create your own regiments and things and.
Yeah. So we'll do that. I like those. I have fairly decent collection of 1/18th GI Joes from like the more modern lines.
Yeah.
And I'll try to go back and try to be a completist on that. Like when there's a lull in different collecting, I'll go back and I'll try to I don't have a shipwreck, or I'm missing a snow job, and I'll track them down. And right now I have them displayed like in the years that they came out, like the original figures. That's how I have them on the shelf, is by year grouping. So, and then that shows me where I'm missing things that I got to track down.
You can see where the gaps are and things. Yeah. No, that's great. Well, Mike, we're at that point now where it's basically just a recap of so just to let people know who you are, where they can find you on social media, because we're nearly at the end now, sir.
Yeah, you can get me at Greybeard with an E _ Plastikwerks on Instagram. I promise I'll start putting more photos up there. It's been a bit. Try and get a lot of photos of Mythic Legions, but also the different toys in the line. If you look far enough, you'll see there is some variety in there. It's not just Mythic Legions.
Yeah, well, I just scrolled down and I noticed there were a few Transformer bits, and then there was it the Roy Fokker Valkyrie?
Yeah, those Robotechs.
I'm
blocking them. Actually, the display just fell down, so I'm not going to show you. Robotech was another line or a cartoon that was big when I was a kid. Do you know the artist Jamie Sullivan? He's a comic artist. I might.
One of this. I'm useless when it comes to this kind of stuff. People will throw names at me, and I'll just go blank. and then later on I'll be like, oh, yep, that's who they meant, or you know. So I'm really useless at that kind of stuff.
He did a lot of covers for like IDW, GI Joe, and stuff. Right. And he's on Instagram, and occasionally he'll sell stuff. So I bought a couple of Robotech prints that he did, and super nice guy, super helpful. Like, make sure you get he'll follow up with you and make sure you got everything and you love it. And then after that, I was like, well, I need some Robotech figures.
Right.
And then he did a cover for the last, like, the final IDW GI Joe issue, and he had like hundreds of characters. He tried to get like every GI Joe and Cobra character in there. And I'll see if I can. Above that door there, I bought those from him. Those are the sketches that he did for that cover. And he went on Facebook and he sold it. Like he tried to find a way to make it fair for as many collectors or fans to buy. Yeah. So each of those are different GI Joe and Cobra, like individual, because he drew each figure and character individually. Yeah. And then he made little cutouts, and he made like a 3D model as he was trying to figure out how he was going to fit them all into this one cover.
Right.
So I try to, like, whenever, and he does a couple of different, 80s licenses as far as like prints and stuff. So occasionally I'll try and pick up some of his stuff and use that as like the background for like a toy display. And that's where I started getting the Robotech figures. I was like, I need something for this.
Yeah. It's amazing how easy it is to kind of like, how it just expands and it branches off to this and it branches off to that. And, you think, oh, well, I've got this. And it's like, yeah, but I've got that, so I need this other one just to balance it out. It's like, oh, I've got a bad guy, right? Well, I better get a good guy so that I can put them on the shelf together. And it just snowballs from there. It's just so easy, I think you have to be really strict with yourself and focused to not let it get out of hand.
Yep. I'd still get a little bit of the McFarlane DC characters or figures. Those are great, but it's like, okay, I'll get like the core with that 7 Justice Leaguers and then a couple villains and then one-offs. They're beautiful figures, but DC line is infinite. And if I try to get them all, then I'm not gonna have room for everything.
There was one that was released, the Marvel Legends. Is it Dr. Spectrum? Do they call him? Is it,
from Suicide Squad? Was it Squadron Supreme?
I don't know. It's a Marvel one. But I think it was called Dr. Spectrum.
Okay.
And they've released him in a 2-pack with someone else. I can't remember who the other figure is.
Yeah.
But when I saw that, I thought, I think I want that.
Yep.
But just that one on its own. So I'm gonna go on eBay and see if people are selling individuals or something. That won't be mine to pick one up. Right, well, Mike, it's time for us to wrap up. I'm afraid. Yeah. It's been great talking to you.
You as well.
It's been a pleasure. There's quite a few things there I'm going to check out after we've done. But no, I appreciate you chatting with us. I appreciate you sharing your collecting journey with us, and hopefully we'll chat again sometime soon.
Absolutely, thank you. I've loved this. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah. So all the best, sir. You take care, and we'll catch you later.
Thanks. You too.
See you later.
Yep. Bye.
Human interface disengaged. Thank you for accessing the Collector's Archive. To enable return access, please select the like, subscribe, and notification icons. Transmission terminated. Goodbye.